The Oklahoma Sooners closed the regular season with a disappointing 37-17 loss. What was the issue? So many.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get it started with a big return over at FanDuel. Go place your first $5 bet, and you can get $150 in bonus bets back guaranteed if you win that first $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com. Use promo code Locked On. I don't remember if there's a promo code. I'm so out of sorts right now, dude. Sorry, guys. I have to write for Sooners Wire, have to come do this, and ultimately just really disappointed in the performance and the effort that the Oklahoma Sooners put on display on Saturday night against LSU. It was a game that I think a lot of us were optimistic about. It was a game that, even though I picked against Oklahoma, I thought it was going to be a lot closer of a ball game than this. If you listen to our prediction pod on Friday, you heard me talk about it. My heart wanted me to pick Oklahoma, but my head was telling me that there have been too many opportunities and too many games this season in which Oklahoma has done exactly what we saw them do on Saturday night against LSU. I know I'm speaking for a lot of people when I just say I'm disappointed. I expected a better defensive effort than what Oklahoma gave. I expected a better offensive effort than what Oklahoma gave. And what it came down to is that the Sooners were just simply not good enough. And I hate that that is the case, that they were not good enough on Saturday night. All of the issues that we've seen from this team on the offensive side of the ball, they came to fruition once again. For about a month, it seemed like Oklahoma could run the ball. And on Saturday, against LSU, they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't get the traditional run game going. The only area in which they had success was in the quarterback run game. Jackson Arnold accounted for 75 rushing yards, and that was a good chunk of the 167 rushing yards that Oklahoma had in the game. I thought, in the first half that everything was going pretty good. You entered the half down 7. Yes, you kind of gave up in the 2-minute drill when you had 2 timeouts and about 40 seconds left on the clock. And they kind of punted that possession away. Though they didn't physically punt it away, they punted it away. And that's as much of the issue as anything. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to fix my background right here. That's as much of the issue as anything, is that Oklahoma had a possession there that they could have tried to do something with, and they couldn't capitalize on it. They had an opportunity to maybe drive and get a field goal there at the end of the half, put Zach Schmidt in a position to kick a long one, and they coached scared. And that, to me, was kind of the turning point in the ball game. Very much so, the kickoff return for a touchdown that erased the lead that you just created. But when you're down 24-17 and you've got 40 seconds left and 2 timeouts and you don't even try to get in position for a score, to me, you just decided, hey, we're done. We've done enough. We put together a good ball game, and that's really all we're going to be able to come up with. And all that being said, the offense didn't do really much of anything. You got the big play to J.J. Hester that set up the Xavier Robinson touchdown. But other than that, the offense was not good. And for any talk that I had about, hey, Joe John Finley might be able to, coach his way into keeping a job or whatever, that's all out the window. The game plan that they had last week, I thought was going to be a lot of what they tried to do in this game, but man, there were so many first down pass calls in this one. I know that they were probably trying to keep LSU off balance and not allow them to stack the box against this offense. But when your offense can't throw the ball consistently, you can't be calling first down pass plays. You just can't. And they did that on a number of occasions. And that led to a lot of second and long situations where then they felt, hey, we got to try to run it and see if we can pick up some, at least 3 or 4 yards to get us into a more manageable third. Just nothing clicked offensively, especially after the first half. The second half, when things started to get away from the defense and they gave up a couple big plays, again, that they're going to be their own discussion point here. But once the offense got 2 scores down, it was church at that point. The LSU Tigers could just tee off. They could just rush the passer. They didn't really have to worry about the run game as much, which has been really the only effective part of Oklahoma's offense for the last month. And once that happened, there was really nothing else they could do offensively. Again, I thought Jackson Arnold played a solid first half, but there was really nothing there in the second half. On the day, he was 14 of 21 for 110 yards. So that's a 67% completion percentage, but he only averaged 3 yards per attempt. He had the 50-yard bomb to J.J. Hester, which, hey, that was a great catch by J.J. Hester. And I saw somebody asking me on Twitter, how does he not get another target after that? And to that, I have no idea. I have no idea how you were able to hit J.J. Hester for a 50-yard completion and then just decide, you know what, we're not going to throw it to him anymore. I don't get how that happens. I really don't. You've got somebody that's got the speed that he has, that's got the size that he has, and you're instead giving targets to Zion Raggins, who hadn't really played much in the last month or so. You're giving 8 targets to Jacob Jordan, who, hey, he played a solid game, 6 catches for 42 yards. And you're not going to try to go back to J.J. Hester. You're not going to try and find that again. It just, listen, I like Jackson Arnold. I think he's a good dude. I think he's got potential to be a good quarterback. It's just not clicking. It's not clicking for him whenever he was dropping back to pass, and that LSU rush was like kind of on him, only barely on him. It was tuck and run every single time. And you need to be able to sit back and try to complete a pass. And I felt like he just he just wasn't going to try and push the ball down the field. The Oklahoma Sooners got some momentum after that. J.J. Hester, big play. Jackson Arnold runs for 28 yards. Xavier Robinson punches it in for a touchdown. And then they just gave it all back on the kickoff return, which, hey, the return game has been pretty solid all year. You hadn't given up a lot of big returns this year. But that one was a backbreaker. You go from being up 14-10 to being up 17 or to being down 17-14. And that really flipped. Like, it flipped the momentum in the game. Yes, you got the field goal and you tied the game up, but it really felt like LSU had got everything moving, especially when Garrett Nussmeier returned to the ball game. Comes back into the game just over 10 minutes or 2 minutes left in the first half and does a great job. He moves the ball down the field. They get the ball out of his hands quick. Now, to their credit, they've got wide receivers that can get open, and that makes a big difference. And then he's able to get a big pass play to Hilton there just before halftime. Eli Bowen, I think, is in good position. He just doesn't turn the right way to start, and he doesn't try to make a play on the ball until it's already in the receiver's hands. And at that point, it's kind of church. And when you go down 24-17 and then you don't give your offense an opportunity to respond, I think they're all kind of looking at the sidelines like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I think maybe they were a little disappointed that they didn't get a chance to go and respond there. We'll have more to say about the offense, the defense, Brent Venables, the direction of the offensive staff, what this team has to do moving forward, coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Hey, the Oklahoma Sooners still have a bowl game left, and I know you're going to be looking at 4 tickets. You got to go check out Game Time. Game Time is the place where you can get the best deals and the best tickets and the lowest prices. They got great features inside the app where you can see what your seat's going to be looking at. Your view is going to be right there in the app. You're not going to have to guess what your line of sight is going to be from, the overhead shot of the map. And no, you can see it right there inside of the app. They give you the panoramic view, also give you the all-in prices. So go download the app in your app store. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. With football season over, maybe you're trying to get to some more Oklahoma City Thunder games. They got great deals available for you in there as well. So go download the Game Time app. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Hey, again, thanks for joining us here on the post-game live show. The Oklahoma Sooners were outgained by a considerable margin in this one by the LSU Tigers, who, 395 to 277. LSU was 6 of 15 on third down, but they were 2 of 2 on fourth down. OU was just 4 of 11 on third down. Crazy stat, Oklahoma had just one penalty, and that was the Troy Everett false start or illegal snap just before the Xavier Robinson touchdown. The turnover battle, it was 1-1. You had the incredible R. Mason Thomas or Grayson Halton strip, and then the R. Mason Thomas, touchdown return. I think at that point, we're all feeling pretty good. We're like, hey, we got a chance in this one. And then later in the game, Oklahoma equals the turnover battle when Bauer Sharp inexplicably decides to fling the ball when he's completely wrapped up and has no idea where he's throwing the ball to. Dude, if anything, I'll be excited to see this offense gone because I'm so tired of the throwback pass. Teams have been sitting on it. This is just one of those parts of an offense that just has to be scrapped. It's worked once, I think, and I got to believe they've ran it at least a dozen times. And it's been nearly a disaster on every single one, except for last week against Alabama. It wasn't a disaster. It was just disappointing because he dropped the ball. Bauer Sharp dropped the ball. So hopefully whoever is the offensive coordinator for this thing, he does not include that tight end pass or the wide receiver pass. Like the fact that we're running so many trick plays, and especially on a drive in which Oklahoma was moving the ball. Like Oklahoma was moving the ball on that drive. And then Joe John Finley just decided, you know what? Let's mix it up a bit. Let's get real crazy. And yeah. And then he throws this inexplicable interception. Oklahoma had run 7 plays, gained 39 yards. They got down to the LSU 36. It was 2nd and 6 on this play. 2nd and 6. You'd been moving the ball. And then you call that play, and Bauer Sharp he has himself a brain fart. Just unreal, just absolutely unreal that you call it in that moment. And LSU was all over it. Like Jackson Arnold wasn't open. The receivers down the field weren't open. Bauer Sharp he was surrounded by like 5 guys. And that's just one of those plays where you just eat the ball. And you just take the sack, you take the loss, and you just move on. But again, it was just one of those plays in a game where Oklahoma just kind of lost themselves. Again, the special teams was good for most of the season, and then has a letdown on that kick return for a touchdown. Eli Bowen, we can start getting into the defense. Eli Bowen, who'd been really good in coverage for much of this year, gets beat on a number of occasions in this game. 2 for touchdowns by Hilton Jr. The first one, like it's a 50-50 ball and he had a chance to make a play on it. The second one, he was just burnt. Just straight burnt. And Garrett Nussmeier with what I got to believe was a cortisol injected shoulder. He put some great balls out there and was fantastic. I mean, Eli Bowen, somebody's mentioning in the chat, Eli Bowen's just a freshman and he's going to have freshman days. And this was one of them. And that you're not allowing or giving your true freshman corner a lot of help out there on the outside, to me, is a little bit of mismanagement. I think Zach Alley's a good defensive coordinator. I think Brent Venables is a great defensive mind. I don't understand leaving him on an island like that. And they paid for it. The Oklahoma Sooners paid for it defensively. It wasn't the best defensive effort we've seen from this team this year. In fact, honestly, it might be the worst effort that we've seen from them, which is kind of a bummer coming off of the Alabama high in which the defense was so dominant. And then you went and had a letdown like this. I know, like the coaching staff has kind of had this issue last year, right? Coming out of the Texas game, you had a performance against UCF where you barely won. You needed a miracle play at the end of the game to come up with the dub. And then you lost back-to-back games to, I can't remember which one was first, Oklahoma State or Kansas, but you lost those games back-to-back. You had just letdowns for several weeks. Well, you had a big win against Alabama, and you had a letdown. You laid an egg in this game. And defensively, I thought this was going to be an opportunity for them to have another strong performance. I believed LSU's offense was going to be good. I didn't think that they were going to be able to put up, let's just call it 30 points, since the special teams unit gave up 7. I didn't think they'd be able to put up 30 points on Oklahoma's defense, but they legitimately did. There were 3 passing touchdowns. Garrett Nussmeier, he cooked them. I mean, at one point he was like completing like 80% of his passes. Later in the game, I think probably because he was getting a little bit sore, getting a little bit stiff. His accuracy dropped off a little bit, but he played a really good game. Our defense did not. Our defense did not play a good game. They got a little bit of pressure early in the game. They were getting some pressure on different times in the second half, but at that point it was too little too late, and there wasn't going to be much you could do defensively because they weren't going to put the ball in harm's way anymore, because they didn't need to, because your offense wasn't really moving the ball. And I mean, credit to the defense. They kept battling. They held them to, just 13 points in the second half, a couple of field goals, and just 2 field goals after that second Hilton touchdown. But you needed them to be better in the first half. It was going to take another really, really good game from the Oklahoma Sooners defense to be able to pick up a win like this on the road against what I thought was a good LSU team. I mean, I don't think obviously it's not the LSU team that lost 3 in a row. It may not be the LSU team that went 6-1 to start the season, but it's a good LSU team. And we saw that on Saturday night. And so, this is a team that, yes, they've got a lot of questions they have to answer. It's 6-6 season. I don't think it's what anybody wanted or expected. I mean, some people may have expected it that aren't Oklahoma fans. I think for most of us, we have higher expectations than this. And so, yeah, it's got to be better. It's got to be better moving forward. I think there are still some really good building blocks on the defensive side of the ball. I think this is a team that will have a big question mark with leadership when you see Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman and Woody Washington, Dejon Terry, Ethan Downs go off to the NFL. That's going to be a big void, leadership void left on the defensive side. But yeah, man, this was just to me, a very disappointing performance. I don't want to use the word a failure, but kind of coming out of the high that we had last week after beating Alabama, it feels like a failure. It feels like a program failure. I don't really know how else to put it about this game. I don't want to beat on them too bad because they are what they are. They're a 6-6 team. They got a lot of problems, and they're not very good. But you had to have a better performance than this tonight. Just had to. We'll continue to discuss. We'll go through some of your comments here on Locked On Sooners coming up next. There's like I said, the offensive coordinator situation is going to be an interesting question that they have to answer. The quarterback situation is going to be an interesting question that they have to answer. And we'll discuss some of that stuff coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We'll have a lot to discuss with early signing period coming up and with potentially an offensive coordinator change coming, or not potentially, definitely an offensive coordinator hire to discuss. And who knows what other staff changes might come down the pipeline on the offensive side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball. You just never know, man. Off season could create all kinds of chaos and turmoil. So we'll just see. I just want to, get back to just a few things. I said going into this game that Oklahoma couldn't afford to give up big plays defensively, and they did. They gave up 2 big pass plays. They gave up a 3rd down play for a touchdown. They could not afford for the defense to have the performance that they had tonight. Credit to LSU and their coaching staff for coming up with a great game plan to target the true freshman cornerback and take advantage of, maybe some inexperience out there on the outside playing on an island. I think Eli Bowen's going to be a good player, but we still need some growth there. We still need some development there. I said that the offense could not turn the ball over. And, when they turned the ball over, it was kind of late in the game, and it may not have mattered as much when Bauer Sharp threw that interception, but they weren't able to create enough offensively that it didn't really matter. The offense just wasn't moving the ball. I felt like they had to come into this and they had to run the ball well, and the running game really wasn't super effective. If you take away Sam Franklin's 61 yards rushing, that I think all came in the final 2 minutes of the game, then Oklahoma only ran for 106 yards. You take away Jackson Arnold 75, and it's worse than that. Xavier Robinson and Gavin Sawchuk ran for 33 yards on 14 carries. For all the good things that the offensive line had done for the last month building up to this game, this was a letdown. LSU was the better team along the line of scrimmage. LSU had the better linebacker core. They had the better game plan. They attacked Oklahoma's offense up front from the get-go, and they were not going to let them run the ball. Now, Jackson Arnold was able to get loose on some read option stuff. He was able to scramble for a few plays, but even his stats don't look as good if you take out 1 or 2 runs. He carried the ball 17 times for 75 yards. One of those was a 28-yard run early in the game that set up the Xavier Robinson touchdown. So you take that 28 yards off, that's 47 yards rushing on his other 16 attempts. Not good. So offensive line didn't perform as well as it needed to in this game. Oklahoma couldn't run the ball like it needed to. I felt like the game plan was weird with so many first down pass play calls to try. I know they're trying to push them back and keep them from crowding the line of scrimmage. At the same time, sometimes you just got to run and get your 2 yards and be in 2nd and 8 as opposed to 2nd and 10, where you now have to run the ball. Jackson Arnold, just not good enough. you've got to be able to push the ball downfield. You cannot live with 3 yards per attempt. You take away that 50-yard pass completion to JJ Hester, and he averaged 3 yards per attempt in this game. It's not great. That's not good. That's not good. That's living along the line of scrimmage. That's living in check down. And you saw tonight that when it wasn't there right away and he felt any semblance of pressure, he was gone. And listen, he played a tough game. He battled, but I need my quarterback to be able to throw the ball down the field. And maybe an offseason where he gets his mind right and he's got some wide receivers available that he feels like he can throw to, maybe things will be a little bit better. But we've seen this kind of same song and dance for most of this season, right? That when things start to break down around him, he's not able to see down the field. He tucks and runs. And that's going to be an issue for any offensive coordinator, whether it's Seth Luttrell or Joe John Finley or whoever the guy is that they hire next. They're going to have to figure that out. Again, the wide receivers, I'm guessing there was not a lot of guys getting open. You can't see it from the broadcast view. We don't have access to all 22. Maybe Greg Sankey one day will create an SEC Plus where we can access the all 22 film. And if that's the case, like some of that gets fixed when you get guys back, but at some point we got to just stop banking on guys returning healthy until they actually get on the field and do something. Like when you line up to play week 1 next year, you can't just be sitting there saying, when we get our wide receivers back. No, you got to have your offense fully healthy and together and ready to go make plays, ready to go do something in the passing game. You're Oklahoma, you're going to run the ball, you're going to run it well, but unless you can do something in the passing game to keep teams off balance, you're not going to be very effective as an offense. Defensively, I think it was just their worst performance. Obviously, they got beat by Texas pretty significantly earlier in the season. I think this was it. I think this was the worst performance that the OU defense had all year. From the secondary, letting guys get behind them, giving up those big plays, to giving up gash runs at times. That part was a little bit surprising. Oklahoma had been really, really good at limiting explosive runs this season, and Caden Durham and Josh Williams both, beat them for bigger runs than what they're accustomed to giving up. And in the passing game, the secondary was giving up explosives. They were giving up third downs, and it was just not a good performance. And some of that goes to the coaching staff. Like, hey, you have a big win last week. You got to reset and rally everybody to do it again this week. You cannot rest on what happened a week ago. You got to get back to what they were doing. You got to get back to playing the game and playing the guy who's in front of you. It's just not good enough. I want to get to some of your discussion points here. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm trying to find some of them. Dwayne Johns says the quarterback job needs to be open with Franklin at running back. Why they do a trick play? And again, Jackson fumbled the ball again. They need to hire an offensive play caller. This is ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, they're going to hire an offensive play caller. Jackson Arnold, if he's still here, I hope he's here. I would like to see a quarterback competition this spring just to see if they can continue to develop him, because you saw it on the JJ Hester throw. He's got the arm. My man just needs to throw it sometimes and just take a chance. And I get, like, interceptions would suck and they'd be terrible, but I'd rather see an interception here and there versus a guy that as soon as there's a little bit of pressure, he just tucks it and tries to escape the pocket. Again, easier said than done. I'm not a quarterback at the collegiate level, but in order to play at the SEC level, you've got to be able to throw it. Chris says Finley just can't call a play that involves a backwards pass. in that situation. It's a dumb risk to take. I understand trying to mix it up, but do that by throwing the ball as far as Jackson Arnold can throw it. Yeah, if you want to take a risk in the passing game, launch it down the field, just like they did. Max protect, try to get JJ Hester behind a guy and see if you can hit him down the field. This throwback stuff, the tight end pass, the running back pass, the wide receiver pass, why is it a thing every single week? And why was LSU ready for it right away? It was dumb. It was unnecessary. And the execution was terrible. Terrible. 4KT says, I feel like Gibson and a little bit of Burks, the rest of the wide receivers quit on OU, especially. I'm not going to go there with you. I don't know. I think injuries are injuries, and I'm never going to question a guy's mental toughness or physical toughness when I don't know the guy. I think injuries are a part of the game, and everybody's timeline's a little bit different. These guys, they just didn't get back, but hopefully we get them back next year and we get to see. Greg G says, I watched 7 football games today, including OU. That's 13 teams, and every single one of them is much better than we are. I'm guessing you're saying there are 13 teams better than what Oklahoma was. Noma D says our tackles were beat off the ball immediately. Yeah, I mean, they were beat on a lot of occasions. Again, this offensive line play was not good enough today. It was a performance that, did not live up to the expectations that I had or that many others had. I mean, we knew that pass protection had been a struggle for the offensive line, but I did not expect them to be as ineffective in the run game because they had been really good. They had been solid and then building towards really good. Maybe that's a better way to put it. R and KHPLR said too many big pass plays against the D this year. No offense pass threat for us. Yeah, that's as big as turnovers. There's so much emphasis placed on turnovers. We don't talk enough about the big plays. If you aren't creating big plays and your defense is giving up big plays, that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe to get beat pretty easily. Chris Satterfield says the whole offense needs to be restructured from the bottom up. I mean, I think that's a reasonable thing to do. I think that there are still offensive assistants that I want to keep on staff. Emmett Jones is one. Bill Beatonbow is another. And then you can talk to me about the rest of it. I'm willing to have an open conversation about those things. Imero says another inept display by the offense. I get it. The whole receiving core is hurt, but you have to give opposing defenses a diverse array of looks. Jay only threw the ball downfield once. Yeah. And it worked. So why didn't we go back to that? Don't get it. Don Joe says our tight end threw more interceptions than our quarterback. Yeah, he did. Not great. Not great at all. Chris earlier said, what positives can we take away from this game? It was a huge step backwards. I really thought that they were going to be able to end the season on a high note and play a game that whether they won or lost, we would feel good about. And that wasn't the case. They played a game that I think a lot of people are disappointed in, especially coming out of what we saw a week ago against Alabama, and maybe that was lightning in a bottle. You had the senior night, you were on prime time, you were at home, and just everything kind of came together. And that's all you could come up with against LSU tonight was just that performance. I get the season is over, says Christopher, but we need to see improvement to roll over to next year. And that is not the case. Yeah, dude. I think everybody was hoping to be able to go out on a high and, be able to finish the season strong. And that wasn't the case. Now they got the bowl game, but the bowl game could be good. It could be a disaster. There's no telling. I mean, between now and the bowl game, who knows what kind of transfer portal defections we'll have? Who knows what the offensive coordinator situation is going to be like? Who knows going to be calling the plays? Who knows who's going to even be playing in it, from your transfer portal stuff to your NFL guys opting out. There's no telling what this roster is going to look like in the makeup of this team whenever they go to play in the bowl game. Brett says they don't know how to start a live podcast on time, do they? Hey, Brett, I appreciate your concern about the live or the timeliness of the podcast. Try to be. I also have responsibilities for Sooners Wire that I am writing and managing over there. So I appreciate your patience with us. And he also said, I thought Arnold played pretty solid in the first half. I thought so too. I thought he played pretty solid. He was getting the offense moving down the field. In the second half, when they were down 2 scores, that was kind of all she wrote. They couldn't really do much anything else. Sooner Nation 85 says fire BV now. No, you don't. He still gets one more year. Remember, you got 45 million reasons why you're not going to fire him right now. He's got to get this offensive coordinator hire right, though. The hot seat is going to be hot in 2025. I think that's going to be the reality. If Oklahoma doesn't respond with a 9-win season, a 10-win season, things are going to get real dicey. But I don't think that you're going to move on. The administration has given him a vote of confidence. The players, they played hard for him last week. I don't know what happened this week. I think maybe just the emotional letdown of the way they beat Bama last week. And they just either didn't have a good game plan. They didn't think that LSU was going to be able to beat them deep like they did. And LSU did. LSU attacked and attacked and attacked, and they won deep on a regular basis against this defense. And that's it. Jesse says back to life, back to reality. Totes my goats, man. This was the culmination of really what this season has been, right? You get a big player here or two here on offense, but not really enough to win a game. And if it's getting into the 30s, and the defense, listen, actually this isn't even really a culmination of what the season has been, because your defense has been pretty good all year. And when they were giving up a lot of points, whether it's Texas or South Carolina or Tennessee, it was the offense a lot of times handing them the ball in short field situations. That didn't happen tonight. Aside from going forward on 4th down on your side of the 50, the offense took care of the ball for the most part, aside from Bauer Sharp's brain fart. Greg asks, just saw a report of Arbuckle to Utah and Gus to Florida State. Heard anything on that? Well, Gus Malzahn is to Florida State. Pete Thamel of ESPN is definitely reporting that, which he's going the Chip Kelly route. Chip Kelly was the head coach at UCLA, left to go be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Gus to Florida State is an interesting one, considering Mike Norvell was a grad assistant on his staff at one point in time. Arbuckle to Utah, we'll see. I haven't heard anything definitive on Arbuckle to Utah. It wouldn't surprise me in the least, but I still have this feeling that Arbuckle to Oklahoma just makes a lot of sense. And it's going to be just whether or not the OC feels like it's a good fit for him, or if they can't get the dollars right or whatever it is. I think it may come down to a few things, but to me, if I was going to pick a guy that the buzz has been centered around this entire time, it's Ben Arbuckle of Washington State. Now, don't go look at the game against Wyoming that Washington State lost 15-14. If anything, maybe that's a sign that your guy was 1 foot out the door heading to Oklahoma. Now, I hope that's not the case. Wyoming's a pretty solid team. I'm not going to sit here and crap on them, but I wouldn't be surprised to see if it's Ben Arbuckle in the next few days. What else do we got here? Questions from y'all. I'm trying to, easy money with you. Never rooting for Texas. Not happening. At least the bowl streak is still alive. Yep. KB says beating Alabama was a blessing and a curse. The good thing is you feel like you can complete with anyone. The curse is you forget that your team has flaws and you feel like they have been solved. Yeah, 100%. Like, I don't think anybody coming out of that game felt like Oklahoma had figured it all out. I think what we figured out was, hey, here's an offense that we can maybe win with, but LSU shut that smooth down, and the offensive line had no answer for LSU's defensive front. That's really what it all came down to. Oklahoma didn't have an answer. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't move the ball. And when that happened, there was nothing in the passing game. Remember last week, they only threw the ball 11 times, but they didn't need to do anything else because the run game was so effective. Well, the run game wasn't effective tonight, and they had to throw the ball more, and it wasn't effective. LSU fan chimed in, glad we beat you, but I'm really glad you embarrassed Alabama. Go Tigers. See you Sooners another time. Yeah, hey, you get to come to OU, come to Norman next season, and we get to face the LSU Tigers then. Yeah, man, there's just a lot to break down from this game. And I know maybe this hasn't been my most locked in episode. Let's see here. Diane says, I feel like LSU did what we did to Alabama last week. Stop the run, make Arnold beat them with his arm. Yeah, which is crazy. The difference being Jalen Milroe had Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard, and they still couldn't do anything. Like, we shut those two guys down. How did that happen? And then you come back the following week and you can't slow down an LSU passing attack. I don't know. It's wild. Wild. SDR says, I hope we hire Buster Faulkner. Dude turned Haynes King into a baller. That's impressive. Yeah. Listen, after what he did against Georgia last night, that's going to be a really popular name until Oklahoma names an offensive coordinator. That's one that's been buzzed. You've been hearing a little bit of buzz about him. We'll see. We'll see. Barney Thompson says we have to do well in the portal. Yeah, 100%. I think you still have questions along the offensive line. I think there's some pieces there that you can build around, but I still think you have questions up front. You may have to go get a portal quarterback to come in and compete for a job. You may need to go find a cornerback if you can. Eli Bowen, solid, something to build around, but do you feel good about the other side? Who do you get back to play the other cornerback spot? So there's going to be questions, and Oklahoma's going to have to take advantage of the portal and hit on a couple of guys. Does R. Mason Thomas go off to the NFL and now you're sitting there and you need a pass rusher? That's going to be a big question. Can they do enough to entice R. Mason Thomas to stay one more year with the Sooners? Against LSU, he had another sack. He has 9 sacks on the season. Been really good. Had another quarterback hit as well. Dude had a good game. Danny Stutzman ended the day with 10 tackles, a half tackle for loss. Billy Bowman had 7 solo tackles. Kip Lewis, 7 solo tackles. Grayson Halton, 7 total tackles. Sorry, not all those guys had 7 total tackles. Grayson Halton had a tackle for loss and a forced fumble. Samuel Masigo had 6 total tackles. I mean, when Oklahoma wasn't getting beat over the top, they were playing good ball. It's just they got isolated and they let guys get behind them, and Garrett Nussmeier had enough arm and his bum shoulder to get the ball down the field, and that's what ended up costing Oklahoma the game. Those 2 big plays to Hilton. That's the difference in the ball game, really. And your offense not being able to move the ball. So anyway, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks for joining us on our post-game lives. This has been a lot of fun to do this year with you guys, and we've had some really good discussions and great comments in the chat. So I very much appreciate everybody that comes and chimes in and sticks around and that has subscribed to the show over the course of this season. We've had a lot to talk about. It's not been the season that anybody would expect or anybody would hope, but thank you again for being a part of Locked On Sooners and listening to Locked On Sooners every day. Again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. We're going to get into recruiting with early signing period coming up. We're going to have a lot to say about the offensive coordinator search. If and when they make a hire, we'll discuss that here on Locked On Sooners. Hey, we're going to have to get into some hoops talk because you got a 7-0 Oklahoma men's basketball team that's making some noise right now. The top 50 in the Ken Palm. Could this be the year that Porter Mosier actually has a tournament team? We'll find out. But so much of our focus is still going to be on football over the next 10 months until we get to the regular season of 2025. But we'll have a bowl game to talk about when those get announced. We'll talk SEC football as well. We'll talk college football playoff. So make sure you're tuned in and subscribe to Locked On Sooners wherever you get your podcasts. But for my man, Jay Smith, who was down in Baton Rouge, we'll have to get his take on how the environment was down there in Death Valley. But for Jay Smith, I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you for our next show coming up here on Locked On Sooners. Boomer Sooner.